That's it. No. That's it. Everyone's your mic on? Yes. Turn it off. Actually, for the recording though, you liked it for the recording, right, Niels?
I do, because sometimes we can't get everyone's voices, and it's good to get that discussion.
We have Molly now.
It's recording. Yeah, we're rolling.
Good, thanks. Okay, good. Welcome everybody to the from March 5th to March 15th, is that right? Good March. Right now we have a hybrid meeting. Is that true? How many people are online?
Currently none.
Okay, good. All right, so those are anybody joining us online. Please let me know when if somebody goes join. That'd be great. I'll give them a couple instructions. I wanted to start out tonight by saying we're here and we're going to have discussion tonight. And we're going to have discussion among the board. We have some new members, we have new people here, and there really won't be a privilege of the floor tonight. So if people are here for privilege of the floor, don't speak openly, speak about appeals, we are not going to be listening to any appeals tonight. We're going to talk mostly among ourselves. This is an open meeting, so you're all welcome to be here. I just want to let you know that we won't be open for anybody to talk publicly unless we decide otherwise. Okay, and I'll let you know if there's some direct questions we would like to ask of you specifically. We did have a few other few open applications, but we're not going to hear those tonight. So just wanted to let you know before we get started. I think the first thing I'd like to do is cover, we have kind of a moving agenda tonight. It's a little bit different than was proposed all week. So the first thing I'd like to do is ask if anybody has specific things they'd like to be put on tonight's agenda. Board manager.
Just to further discuss some of the ideas I proposed in our meeting last month.
Yeah, good.
Specifically on procedures and notifications.
So general procedures or specific ones that you proposed last time?
Yeah, I proposed.
Okay. Excellent. Yes, and we're definitely going to talk about that. Any other board members?
A little procedural things too when we do that.
Okay. Procedures. A lot of this, some of this is to get on the same. I don't know if they introduce ourselves to our new people and to start working together. In fact, we're doing a great job so far. Great job. I really like all the work you've done. I think it'd be better for us to get to know each other and get to know what it is we do. Also, at some point, I don't know if we said the word codify is maybe a bit too strong, but we want to just kind of at some point start recording the procedures that we do have. And so anytime we do, I think I would like to notify you and say, this is a procedure, can we just write it down? Not necessarily to be reported at any given time in the future, but at some point I'd like to take the procedures that we have, we pull together. We actually are pretty, I don't know, stringent is the right word, but we're consistent in our procedures here. So we're going to start writing those down a little bit. And just for the benefit of the people coming in, and then present them to the board ultimately. And we really don't have a mandate to do that. We know that you would appreciate just some structure, some rules that we tend to follow. I feel like we've been really consistent over the years. Is that true, Andy?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And Steve, Bob mentioned the document earlier. Is that BZA guidance document?
Yeah, there's one.
Syracuse,
the 2015 one from Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse.
Right.
It's a plain English summary of the law, and it is what we follow. More the state has older, more detailed documents, but they're entirely consistent. And this one I find it's shorter, easier. Probably better to do.
In good wording, easy to, not, like, it's simple for, it's not simplified, it's just well said without, spice. So did you have something that?
No, I just want to make sure I pulled the right back.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit. So I think the consistency Bob has said in the past, I think numerous times, and I agreed and also said, since we've been on the board, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's true, there really hasn't been much of an issue with legal.
No, we have met with an attorney on site one time, was a special site visit.
Right.
Yeah, and that was, and then we've had.
Appellants coming back and having, legal reporters or some kind of issue. Yeah, I think that
As far as I know, like the legal recourse they have is Article 78, I believe it's called. And as far as I know, there's not been one against the BZA in more than a decade.
right. So and that's been my experience here for several years. Andy's for several and Bob's for several more, I think. And, so I think that goes to our consistency of procedures and that we follow and the care that we take in looking at all these cases. So we feel sure that we're always aware that we're dealing with each other, that we're all neighbors and we're all going for common goals. And so we're real careful about appeals that we look at. And we also have the balance of anything rights, not because if somebody wants something, that's very important. That's the reason we're here. But we have to balance out your needs and desires with all sorts of other things. So we do that. We do that in a real careful way. So good. I think our procedures are good, and I'd like to just every once in a while we come up with something that we do all the time. Just remind ourselves, oh, it's something new, and maybe have knowledge for it. Is that okay? All right. So then we can have it on this. I don't know if it's going to be comprehensive, but it's going to be basically the things that we do almost all the time. Is that okay for the board? As board representatives, you feel like that's a. So I don't know, do we want to deal with past minutes at this point? Or do we want to put that on hold too? I'm not sure how we want to proceed here with just something normal.
I honestly did not get a chance to be, sometimes I can leave in the last minute, the last day or two.
And so, the chance,
I don't, no, I reviewed the minutes from January.
okay, good. I wasn't here then, so. Hey, did you like them? Did you like them? Welcome, Molly. We're glad to have you. Tom, do you have any
February minutes.
You did February?
Yeah,
Andrew.
that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, great. I think that I really appreciated them, by the way, and I appreciated them in their brevity. So I want to talk about minutes for a bit. And it came up with the lawyer. Would you like to speak on what the lawyer said about minutes, and then I'll add some of the things that I figured out.
Sure. And just a quick question: did the board approve the agenda, or did you approve an amended agenda?
Well, that's another question. So these are rules, and these are rules in certain structures, and that's not a rule we've ever really followed, or that's not one we've adhered to, I should say.
And so the question is, do we need to? I know there's formalities in a lot of other meetings and meeting structures and a lot of things I've been through. You go through Robert's rules, or you go through these strict rules. And
Well, I think you do need to adopt the agenda.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I believe we did in January.
We did, and we did in February too. But I'm something like, well, when did this come about? Because I never really.
You historically didn't. I will say that.
Right.
And the law specifies that meetings can only be called by the chair. And so if there is to be an agenda, it should come from the chair by law. My understanding. The agenda we're given was not produced by the chair.
Mhm.
So I have a problem with that. For example, perhaps we should have an agenda. Historically, we haven't, but it hasn't come from the chair.
For example, the town board every meeting has an agenda.
Sure. Yeah, I know that. Right.
And if the supervisor develops. And then as the meeting starts, You take a vote, for something you want to get something to the agenda, and win the agenda, then that's the first thing you do.
Mhm.
So I recommend you do that, just so it's on record, what the agenda is, and to follow it.
The BZA has a very specific charter under law. It's quite different from the town board in terms of, we very directly follow like state law dictates and mandates, and you and the town board do not. You are charged by law setting up your own procedures and all. We actually only within slight limitations can, because it is dictated by the state, by the Department of State.
Yes. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I just, I have a question. We have a couple of members of the public. One was Nathan. I'm wondering if this is our legal counsel. And if it is, if he would like to keep in.
Oh, online.
Name on
There's someone named Nathan.
it. Name, yeah.
Is that me? Let me see.
Where else? Yeah, Nate. Nate, right.
I can't speak to the history. You guys can speak to the history, but I would presume at least it's good practice, best practice to set an agenda, even if it's not a requirement under state law.
Yeah, so I'm not being so too argumentative, but I don't think I want to adhere to a bunch of structures and rules that come from elsewhere. And I think we want to really focus on the ones that are important for us. And I'm pretty sure, I agree with Bob, I'm pretty sure, I looked at it pretty closely over time. I might be wrong, but I don't think we need to have things like that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have an agenda from the chair, and then at the beginning of the meeting, ask if any members of the board would like to add. So, yeah, and that could come well before them. And, but I have this question mark. Do we need to incorporate that as a formal policy that we adopt an agenda every time?
Any motion,
Let's
any
refer
further on it and all that.
Yeah, so, yeah, as I read the minutes from January, those things popped in my head like, oh, this is the first time you're chairing. And a lot of things didn't go as I would have them go the second time. And so, yeah, I saw that jumped out because we went through the whole process of voting me in as temporary, interim, temporary.
Which is
chair.
essential. We had to do that.
Yeah, and then Tom is the alternate. And
either of you were here for that, I would be in favor of having a rehearing with a significantly different cast of characters here.
Oh,
I would like to hear your opinions on it, because it was a tie vote last time.
mhm.
And now two active senior members of this board are here, and I think it would be appropriate to do a rehearing. So I would not vote no as I did last time.
No, interesting. Andy,
I don't
thank you,
know.
Tom.
I think it'd be a rehearing and, don't know, so, yeah.
No to a rehearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then that does it. It would have to be a
I
unanimous.
think,
yes.
yeah, I mean, we haven't taken a vote, but if we do, that's gonna do it. So I guess I'd like to put it to a vote at this time, unless you have some qualm about that and want to wait till the next time or something. Anybody have any further discussion on this? Okay, so do I have a motion on the floor to designate this as a rehearing?
So moved.
Right? Second. Okay, Andy, thank you. Any further discussion on this? Okay, I'd like to bring the vote. The motion is that this is to be designated a rehearing. All in favor or not?
It has been designated a rehearing. The question is now, do we
Are we in
actually,
favor of?
do we actually hear it? And we have to have a unanimous
Yes,
consent to do so.
okay, that's a good one. So that's what you're saying? Do we put this rehearing? Do we hear this rehearing? Right, okay. I'll take that. All right, vote, I'll call the vote.
I say yes.
Okay,
No.
no, and I say no, and that's, the motion is not carried. So there will be no rehearing on this based on the rules on the state and everything else. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. We're gonna come up in a positive way, but I think, it just fell into that strange thing that it doesn't constitute a rehearing. This doesn't mean that if it weren't that, it would go forward anyway. There's lots of other moving parts too. I really liked the idea of you looking for alternatives, and I continue to encourage that.
There are
None, really?
not that would allow it to be used as a garage to park the car. It'd be a barn if it's out back. You wouldn't park the car in it or 200 feet to get to the house.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. It's a long linear area of the property. I see it. And I'm totally sympathetic. I get it. It's tough. You got 200 foot of road frontage. That doesn't help. Right?
They all are through there.
Right.
The lot between us and Scott owns is 200 feet as well.
Yeah. Right. If that were added on, you know, but, I wish you could keep looking for alternatives to some other. Can't guarantee that if you didn't bring something forward, it would be the same result. I don't know if it would. And I think with more information, that would be helpful, but alternatives would be helpful. And I can't promise anything to vote. I'm sympathetic and want to come up with a solution that'll help you. And this one just doesn't seem to be, it's been passed through here tonight for sure, maybe in the future. But, yes, Rich.
So let me ask you this.
No, you have to talk to me next.
So if they were to actually purchase a piece of land.
Yeah, 200 more feet. Yeah.
They get 200 feet.
Well, if they hit, that next thing is 200 feet, isn't it?
No, they get the variance.
I'm saying the next property, the lot that's next to it is 200 feet.
If he sold it real straight to make it legal. So he wouldn't need a variance. How many feet is that?
What's the setback from the sideline?
24. So you need to buy, you need to work with the neighbor. Buy the 24 feet. So you wouldn't have to cut it.
Right.
And that's been asked to him, and he has said no to it for the reason of him then not having 200 feet of that lot to be able to sell it, whatever he wants to do.
I mean, currently it's
pre-existing non-conforming lot is what it is.
I know, it's really not conforming, and it always was, and it doesn't even have the permit, so I'm not sure if it's correctly, but you can't even replace that building on its current footprint, is that true?
The shed, no, but the house,
The shed.
yeah, the shed, no.
So sometimes you can get away with that a little bit. You just take down the structure that you have and then put up something else, and the variant, you're not changing it too much. But this, you're in a pickle because this thing was not even never permitted, right?
Before your time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in a pickle, but I appreciate that. That's a suggestion that like, how about a cutout? If you think about, not take the road frontage, but take a cutout portion, it would not violate. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm not sure if Mr. Handler would go for that or not. And if you can think of other alternatives, I'm more than glad to do. We're for it, but not for it.
So no appeals going forward. There wasn't an appeal.
No, it comes to rehearing, and then we decide whether we're gonna bring it on to a full rehearing, and we voted against it.
Right, so the payment has already been put in place, is that? The $150 application fee has already been put in. Is it not being processed?
Good question. Question for Niels.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's not a hearing. In my past practice, we had something prescriptive that we could jurisdiction would refund back a certain portion. So I could see the only cost at this point that I could say would be for the legal notice through the paper. So if it's amenable, we could refund the remaining portion.
And that's for the second appeal, you're saying, for this? Oh, the second time was, you put a payment into this one too? Okay, and who's that up to?
I don't think it's up to us.
I don't think it's our purview, but. You have something like that, sir? No, I thought you were raising this picture.
I would think it's the town's decision to.
Why don't we think that?
Yeah, it's on our decision. I'm for it, but add it to the agenda. It's not our purview. So. Right. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. And good luck on all the stuff. Answers. Okay.
Want to proceed with what you're asking?
I do. I was
Before I
looking.
distracted you there.
No, I'm thinking. Thanks, Bob.
I want some time to think.
No, I'm good. It's good because it would have been very painful for them to sit and take all this. And
It seemed that way. And to wait for another month for us to say no, we can't.
Oh, I'm very excited.
Thank you for moving that.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah, Bob, I want to go over some of the things that you went over. Now we have a little time to breathe and
Yeah, let me
think about this stuff.
let me remind you, I brought these issues up at our last meeting. We didn't spend a lot of time on them. We were doing other things. There was a lot of discussion going on. I think we said we would come back and talk about some of them again, and I'd like to again. Let me just read what I wrote, because I think it's actually really good. And in part, what I was trying to do is to address what I understand to be the concerns from the town board. We should have more procedures, part codified where we are so that everyone understands. And in part, suggesting some things that I think we should more formally do, things we've always done, but they've sort of slipped by the cracks. So what I'm reading is a combination of the above. So it's 3 paragraphs. It's a short read. The role, and then the first part is just the legal description of where we are, but be on the town website. The role of the Board of Zoning Appeals, BZA, for the town of Ulysses is to hear appeals of decisions rendered by staff of the town's Department of Planning, Zoning, Building, Code, and Enforcement. And just for context on that, some BZAs and other towns have additional responsibilities, but we do not. And so I think clarifying that up front is correct. That mandated by state law. Anything beyond that would have to be assigned to us by the town board, which is never happened. So this is our sole charge, and we have no business doing anything beyond hearing appeals. That's what we're doing here. When hearing any appeal, the BZA closely follows New York state law and regulation, including case law from court decisions, and adheres to the procedural guidance recommended by the New York State Department of State. A common language guidebook published by the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University in 2015 provides a useful summary that the BZA calls. See, I did say that. References to the technical guidance document from the Department of State that provides from the summary guidebook. So what's that? We very carefully follow exactly what those guidelines are. We don't actually, any BZA in the state has to do something. We're saying it, but I think anyone who doesn't know what BZAs are about could look this up on our website and go and see the procedure. Hearings and meetings of the BZA may only be called by the chair of the BZA pursuant to the New York state law and guidance. And that is a matter of law. I'm the vice chair. Even in your absence, I don't have the power under law to call something. It has to be the chair. And we have had some confusion about that on January meeting, for instance. We're not called by the chair, so I think we want to be real clear about that. The chair shall in no case call a meeting to hear an appeal with less than 2 weeks notice given to all BZA members, except when he or she determines extenuating emergency circumstances require less than this. Members of the BZA shall receive copies of the appeal and supporting documents at the time the chair calls the meeting, again, generally at least 2 weeks in advance of the hearing. And that I think is important. Historically, we always did at least 10 days to 2 weeks. We've fallen in recently, we're getting materials the night before, and it's overwhelming. It's hard for us to do a good job. But I think stating that we want 2 weeks is, I think.
So that's not our procedure, but the procedure more general of staff.
But it's what we are required. Right. And we can require. Staff of the town's Department of Planning, Zoning, Building, and Code Enforcement shall assist the chair and BZA members in preparation for BZA meetings and hearings. This includes providing legal notice as required by the state of New York, and in addition, providing signage on the application property following best practice as recommended by the state, and notice in writing to any resident or owner of property within 1,500 feet of the boundary of the application property. The signage and notice will be provided no less than 2 days after hearing is called by the chair. The notices given beyond the state mandated minimums are intended to improve public input to the BZA hearing process. So the context there, the state requires notice, I believe, of 5 days, and only for people within 500 feet. So I'm suggesting taking that up to, so it will be 12 days, basically, 2 days after the call.
Based on how many feet yours.
And I'm suggesting 15. I just do it up for discussion. But I think in the particular case where we decided just now not to rehear it, these gentlemen actually are among my closest neighbors. I get up every morning and drink coffee, and I look out at their house, you know. And yet the only reason I knew they were hearing is because I'm on the BZA, because I'm not within 500 feet. The water from their property runs onto my property. They're a major part of my beach area.
What's that measure? Mailbox to mailbox or house to house?
Property line to property line. And I'm 650 feet away. Yeah. And so I feel it should be longer than that. But, and the signage thing, we have not done. I believe the planning board does that. We've never done it. The state does not require it. They require only the 500-foot notice. However, they do recommend it. And they recommend the BZA's implement.
What?
The signage.
Right. Got it.
And so I believe we should mandate that we have signage.
So when do you, is this one sign on the property? Is that it? It's really,
I believe that's what the planning board does, right?
It's silent on how many number is required.
Well, it's on the property itself. It's not all up and downtown.
No, it's on the property frontage and must be viewable from the right of way.
Okay. And the planning board does that.
Correct.
I find it useful. I told you earlier,
Extremely.
you know, last fall I was walking my dog along the Keel Road, and all of a sudden there's a sign there saying it's going to be a planning board hearing on a subdivision of this property, which is quite close to me. Again, I would never have known that except I saw the sign. It's within my neighborhood. And so I think having that sort of notice so people will see if they care I think it's a valuable public service. So the state suggested best practice, the planning board does it. We have the power and the state law to require it.
Can I ask?
I have copies of people.
No, you gave them last time.
Oh, I know, but you didn't bring.
No, I didn't.
Andy, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I just, concur with what you're
So
saying.
send to Rich, send to.
Would you like a copy?
Oh, we have one.
I can see, you know, I have, when I had my coffee, I see a big stretch of the Keel Road. And of course, I wasn't notified of that, and I must have not seen the sign because I go down the Keel Road quite often. But, so I think that expanding it is a good idea. I don't know what the number is for.
I don't know, it's like 15 for discussion, but to my mind, 500.
Still wouldn't get you, 15 won't get you.
No, that would get you, but
That's it.
still.
It might have for them.
Well, what does that entail? Can I ask, what does that entail, money wise or effort wise, and from the town to actually put a sign up and?
Oh, actually, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
I get the signs ready, but the applicant posts the signs.
Oh, okay.
The planning board does it.
Planning board itself, it doesn't.
Right, it doesn't matter where you bring that plan.
Because the plan board now requires it and we don't.
I see, planning board requires, and there's a during the subdivision.
So the code requires that the planning, that occur for the planning board.
Because the code currently doesn't require that for BZA hearings.
So you prepare them and give them to the applicant. And he puts them up.
Correct.
What if he doesn't put them up?
They're required to, and I would suggest at the hearing that the planning board not hold the hearing until the notice is put out, because that's part of the requirement.
I guess it's just a little small, but this is from a person's best interest, like fewer people see the sign.
Unless they're caught.
What?
Unless they're caught and then there's no hearing.
Right, right.
It's a little glitch.
That sounds like a punishment, though, right? That sounds like a punishment, though, right? You won't have a hearing if you don't.
Yeah, but somebody's got to check and make sure.
No, well, enforcement then, that's my thing, that's, and you enforce that?
I enforce it. I do drive-bys, but a practice that I've taken over from previous one is like we had get affidavits of publication from the journal. And now tell the applicants they have to supply an affidavit of posting. That covers all our I's and T's.
Okay.
So the code required the planning board, but not the BZA.
Correct.
The state does not require, but does recommend it to BZAs and says BZA can require it. So I'm suggesting that we codify it as our requirement.
Yeah, I want to say that I wish we had more notification, because I feel like the participation from the public is not very good sometimes. It's, you know, we just don't have it. And some people just anecdotally say, oh, I didn't know about that. I see that you passed that thing. I didn't even know about it. So, yeah, okay. So it'd be nice to get it out, but we do get it out other ways too, right? I mean, it goes out on the internet, right? Is it not?
Because of the number of ways, so we do a publication and the Ithaca Journal, we post it on the website.
Right.
The clerk puts it in the newsletter.
Right.
We post it on the boards here.
I think the newsletter is useful and I see it and I see things.
That's the one that
there.
comes across email.
But I wouldn't expect the average person, average citizen in the town to come to town hall every week to see what hearings might be of interest to them, and nor are they checking the email notices. If the journal, it just doesn't happen, right?
I would agree.
And so that's what I like about signage, is that people who are driving and walking around in their neighborhoods will see it.
I think I'm for a signage thing, and I don't know how we proceed, but I think it's a good idea, and especially if we already have the enforcement officer right here, and Valentin to do it. I say we have Molly do it, since she's a new person.
What do you want me to do? Move it? I don't know if I'm
No, but that
authorized.
seems reasonable to me. I'm not sure what the expense would be, with having go from 500 feet to 1,500 feet. But you can get a lot more people in your neighborhood, and we get one more person, probably, right?
Yeah.
Two, maybe two.
Two or three, yeah.
I'm not sure how much more effective that is. And then in some neighborhoods, would it be this substantial expense?
If it's in the neighborhood, say like Jacksonville,
Yeah.
where the properties are more narrow, then it'd be a lot more property owners. postage, and postage is currently 60 cents, but that's 60 cents.
Well, no, so I'm jumping to the, I like this idea of the signage, and I'm thinking now of expanding to 1,500 feet in terms of mail notification.
The state requires 500 feet and 5 days. I'm suggesting 12 days and 1,500 feet for discussion.
So if I may, so the gist here is we're following the very bare bones minimum. And I think that the board, the consensus I've been hearing, especially over time, is that more notifications better. And within reasonable limits. And so I'm trying to think, okay, say we send a letter to everybody in the hamlet, maybe 1,500 feet. You know, we're talking maybe half a dozen, maybe people at 60 cents a letter.
Yeah, even the worst case scenario doesn't seem.
Yeah, $4, $3 or $4 is postage, and then the signs. So it is an added expense, and I don't know what the future is going to bring, but our appeals have been sparse lately, especially during the pandemic. We've had many months when we just didn't even have a meeting because there were no appeals. And I don't know if that means people aren't doing anything or if they're not filing appeals or what.
Mark, costs are way up. People aren't really interested in building them. There's probably a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Well, how much is each sign cost? Is there a wooden sign or something?
Yeah, it's a plastic sheet that's put on metal spike type things that goes on the ground. Mark Washburn has the contact, so I can find out what each sign costs.
That's similar to what you use for campaigns.
All those two metal things.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one, we're talking about one per appellant, right?
If the board goes down this road, then there's a number of things we can do with past jurisdictions I've worked with had
A sign per so many feet of frontage.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it would potentially be more than one sign.
Yeah.
Could be several.
I suggest at the start, just to keep it simple.
Per frontage.
See where it goes. It's a big step forward. You don't have to decide on it.
Sure.
And I think whether you want or several people are going to
In the code already for the planning board?
no, it's open to interpretation.
Okay. I was gonna say, usually
we could do that. I mean, I'm fine with doing more, but I'd like to see us do it. And I'd like to keep it simple. So
I have to say, I'm in favor of the more notification, the better. And is there any problem with notifying earlier? So now we're done with it earlier.
No,
I'm in favor of opening up the notification. The more, I'm not sure what it's gonna do, but it's certainly giving everybody a fair chance. Now, 5 days seems good as minimal, doesn't it? Think about what you can do. Can you go to that meeting 5 days from now? Not everybody can afford to do that. But sometimes we get a lot of people and a lot of neighbors at the meeting. So I don't anticipate that for everything, but
Could we talk about the timing issue? Because this is actually
yeah.
the way Bob has written this up, it really applies. Niels has been very conscientious in what you're preparing for us. But if you can't get it to Steve 2 weeks before the hearing, then it should bump to the next month. You know, the stuff that you got out late stuff last night, but that should then be bumped to next month because we need time to work on it. The signage says should be no less than 2 days after the hearing is called. So again, that would require the material be prepared 2 weeks ahead so Steve can call a meeting with 2 weeks notice so we can get the signage out, et cetera. You may be being too thorough for that at the moment, but you've been very thorough and you may be very overloaded, but I don't think we can go on this short a time span as we got squeezed this time. We should shoot for 2 weeks notice.
so I actually have a question on that. So the material that was
Sent
sent out,
out yesterday was the minutes after discussion with Nate. I should clarify, the new information that was sent out was the information, right? So Nate and I had a discussion on Monday, late Monday, and so I sent that information out yesterday. And then the memo that we previously discussed about the wetland issue on Cape Lake, yeah. But intermittent streams, yes. The board, so on
The resolutions are there, I think.
draft resolutions, yeah. So if you need those, I can definitely set those in advance, but the board was sent on March 1st, all the materials for the variance items, which is more than 2 weeks. If that's still not enough time, then let me know.
2 weeks is good. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was getting a whole load of stuff last night after I'd gone to bed. There wasn't a lot of time to work on it, as Bob's letter to you suggested as well.
So if you want the draft resolutions also in advance, let me know.
But most of the discussion there, I would presume, is for the board members to discuss during the hearing.
I mean, and you're right, I wrote this more than a month ago, right, so I'm not responding to anything. But the further advanced we get stuff, the better, and we all have many things going on in our lives, we're all volunteers, right? So, you know, I really like to be able to take the time and read what you send us and think about it. In this case, you know, I just wasn't able to do it, which makes me feel bad. So giving us more time.
Can I address the draft resolutions? The draft resolution, by the way, is the whereas, and all that. I don't feel like I need that way.
Okay.
I mean, you?
No, we need details on what the variance is.
We need all the other details.
These people want to build their house and they want to build it 5 feet into the neighbor's yard.
Yeah, right.
We want to know.
And
5 feet
the
into neighbor's yard.
rule is where 24 is allowed. I mean, that's kind of, we really need to know that. And then all this stuff, the background, these are my maps, but the background maps that you created, provide the maps, the plats and the drawings of where these things are going to go and all that stuff.
And reminding us specifically what the setbacks are each case.
Always.
These wonderful
Sorry, you need to do that with us.
folks on the town board have very complicated.
And then when you remind us that it's a steep slopes and steep slope overlay, and it's all, you know, those are really important things to have early on.
It's great stuff you're putting together. We just need sometimes a little more time to work it.
So again, the material was sent out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I know there's been ongoing issues with our email servers. So what I've been doing, what I did this last time with Carissa is I also have the clerk post everything like at least 2 weeks in advance on the board. But if you don't receive anything by 2 weeks, let me know and or check the website because everything will be on the calendar.
You gotta make sure we get it.
Yeah. There's two different ways. Yeah.
Not until I start panicking, we go, well, where is everything? And it's like other places. My real employer can't do that. That's what I'm doing. That's like 30% of my FTE is New Year's.
Yeah, we're not whining. We're just saying that that would be reasonable. A couple weeks beforehand, right? Andy said
Yes.
Would be great for the real nuts of, nuts and bolts of the.
And calling it from the public is, I think 2 weeks. Although, you know, I've suggested emergency language, so if something comes up and it's an overwhelming reason to do it, clearly the tomorrow to do it.
And sometimes we'll say, hey, there's someone really needed something and can we have an emergency? Although it wasn't scheduled and, especially if we already know all about it. It's something pretty cool. We're flexible sometimes. So there were a few things that are getting stuff earlier, and that's more like communication between us. Don't worry about all the details of those. I could get those whereas at the last day, just so we're ready for them to do it at the meeting. But a nice sheet saying what they are, maybe one paragraph, this, that, and that, whereas, where this is the rules. 10 feet where it's really 50, 5 feet, all that. Those are really the key, right? And then to have some information, that background stuff is great, especially from the appellant. Stuff's necessary. Brilliant. Like it, good stuff, right? Good thorough information. Don't worry so much about being so thorough with us anyway. I'm not sure. I mean, you're doing a great job, so no one's really doubting that. I really also depend on you being our liaison to the lawyer, town lawyer. And occasionally we have scheduled sessions with the town lawyer. Occasionally, how many times do you?
I think I was sheriff for 5 years and we did it twice.
Yeah, you remember saying once or twice. So that's just, we don't usually do that until it's like, no, we really all need to talk about this. It's those nuanced questions. This was great. Your review of what the lawyer said was awesome. I mean, it's perfect. You answered all my questions. And so I guess my next question is, I want to refer back to our statement earlier. Oh, should we get Nate on and ask him this question about whether we need to do some procedure? Is that Nate's expertise? It is? With the BZA? What the BZA should do?
Shocked to see that.
Okay. Just don't know. I don't know.
I would be shocked if he doesn't, I'll tell you. But he's supposed to know that.
All right. We tend not to like try and, oh, let's get the lawyer and, we got to spend a lot of town money just.
These guidance documents from the state are really straightforward.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, they are.
You know, if the lawyer gave us advice contrary to those, I'd be amazed. But,
It's up to you, it's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
You don't do it.
Well, that's why we don't really need them until something really intricate.
I mean, for instance, on the general question of minutes, obviously state open meetings law requires that we have minutes, and state BZA law requires minutes too.
But that's what they
Yes.
demand.
And then they say it's totally up to the BZA to define the scope of them. And they're very clear.
And they have to have certain minimum that you have to do.
The minimum is you have to say who was there, what the motions,
What motion were and what the votes were.
if they pass. They actually do not have to even record.
If they pass.
Yeah, that's right. That's the minimum. Now, we obviously want to do more than that, and historically, we've done a lot.
So can you devise some guidance on
Sure.
how much you want?
Yeah, that's why we wanted to bring this up. We were talking earlier, it's like, it'd be great to give
what-
Molly guidance.
What we historically have done, and your predecessor did a fantastic job. So it's a high bar, but what we've done is to have fairly detailed minutes that beyond saying what the motions are, capture at least the essence of the discussion.
Mhm.
So that if it goes to court, which it hasn't in a long time, the record is really clear on what our project is. And also, the general public can look and try and understand why we're making the decisions we have. And it also allows us to go back 2 or 3 years later and why did we make that decision? How does it pertain this time? You can refresh yourself because the actual discussion is captured. So that's much more than the lowest bar. It's a lot of work to do a target.
But I want to say that, so Lou did a really great job. When we got into these longer discussions where we talked about the nuances and do all that, he would just put it into caps. He would encapsulate it in a kind of general, there was general discussion on the topic of this, and it didn't stop there. It was like, and the gist was whether this was this or whether that was that. That's a great way to take a page worth of stuff or more and put it into a short little couple sentences. That was perfect. He did I really approved of that. And every once in a while we'll say, yeah, that didn't quite capture it, because it's not easy to do that. That's like almost simultaneous translation, but not really, because you can look at this later, right? Are you gonna go off with the record recording? Because he always recorded too.
Yeah, we are
So you
recording.
go off recording. And if you try and do every single word, I don't think that's
Right.
worthwhile. So there's a little bit of sorting, a lot of sorting that goes on in your part. The gist of it, you agree? Did you like his minutes?
If you happen to be worthwhile, taking a look at 4 or 5, half a dozen of what he's produced in the minutes, just to get some sense of what in the past has made us happy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
It's hard for us to describe it. You can kind of see it.
it's not after a whole lot of corrections by us later on. Well, can you go back and change this? And that's not really what we said. We rarely did that.
Very rarely. Very rarely. Interestingly, in the January minutes, there was a minor point in the discussion. I mean, it was a brief point in the discussion, but it wasn't captured in the minutes. And so sometimes we might, when we're reviewing the minutes, ask that that be inserted. In that case, there was where the appellate was saying that the well was 5 feet from the property line, but in actuality, it was 2 feet from the property line. It's still way too close, but it was but it was like we were being told something that was clearly not the case on the map, and I corrected that and corrected it on the record. It didn't make it into the minutes, and I think it's kind of moot at this point. But that's sort of
We haven't approved those yet,
sometimes we go through there and just Steve is great at correcting finding any grammatical or spelling errors. So
It's not, A, we haven't accepted those minutes yet, and B, it's not, because we could still be challenged on Article 78 and having the most thorough documentation of the discussion.
So it's not,
Could be important part of
We
it.
didn't vote on them yet.
it might be important. Yeah.
You should still correct. Yep. So, but there are times, and I'm not sure how we're doing it with recording. So are you recording right now? Writing?
We've been recording.
I know you're recording, but like writing things, I'm just not sure because Lou would up.
Yeah, I'm taking
talk about
notes.
this, he goes along and then, not everything, but every once in a while we'll say, that's important. Did you get that? And should we just state it into our microphone? Is that the way to do it? How would you like to see it? Some
I
things we
write
want.
pretty much everything down unless it's, not really something that needs to be written down because it's just not relevant, but
Right.
I'm being very generous with what I take notes with.
Okay.
But if you really want to reiterate something,
Yeah, we
that's
will. We'll do that.
appreciated.
There'll be times we'll say, yeah, that's real important. Did you get that? Molly?
Mhm.
Sometimes can you read it back to us? Things like that.
Of course, this whole discussion might mirror one sentence.
Yeah, right. Discussion was
Right.
about,
I'm
signage
not
and all that.
doing that many right now, but
One sentence on my
One,
signage.
no, that's all you get. Bob wanted to increase the so-and-so.
People spend way too much time
Do the
discussing.
so-and-so. That's a worthwhile phrase. Well, that was good. I'm glad. I wanted to go to that discussion with Molly. It's really helpful. Thanks, Rich. That was a good point.
I think the one thing where would help with minutes and especially with the resolutions moving forward
Is if there is an amendment during the resolution, is really suss out the exact language the board would like and then state that so that we can definitely make sure we get that.
In the past, we often had Lou read back to us what we
What
thought.
did we just
done.
say?
And
Right.
he would do a pretty good job. That's difficult once we get going. And we there, as opposed to minutes, we would regularly correct him to make sure we get the exact thing we want to.
Yeah,
But we
ask
would do
each
that
other.
real time and he would feed it back. So we were voting on the language that he had actually captured.
Right, right.
Do that if the town wanted to do this, if we're going to change the resolution. We have to do it on the spot.
Right. And then you say, is that right? Is that what you said? No, not really. I said, that's okay. Get it, do it again. And so sometimes you'll be like, you make you nauseous by repeating it 4 or 5 times more. But we are careful about it, very careful. Those are the things that really, really count. All of this stuff matters, but that really counts. Yes?
I would like to see us adopt a resolution mandating at a minimum of this discussion.
Mandating science? Okay. I'll
Sign
go
it.
with that. I second that.
Science.
Science.
Sign the, yeah.
No, I like
Out
to
of
do
the things
that.
I proposed.
That was
Other
my-
things
that's
here
my-
too. I'd like to.
That's where I was going. It's like, what do we do about this now? Now that it's like, well, we're kind of in agreement, and what do we do? We just pass it on to the board, or?
I think we have the power to do it. We could ask the board to endorse it too, but I don't think we need to.
We just make that one of our rules, or?
So go back and read Nate's stuff, and I
Chatted with him again last today, but the BZA doesn't have the authority to just put that in your rules. It has to be codified under code, which is under the town board's authority.
That's a code.
That,
We don't have the authority to do that.
that's actually not what the guidance from the state says. So this is an area where I don't know. It's just
Question
wrong
for
with our lawyers, but The state, if you look at this document that I've referred to, yeah,
You don't think that's a code? It's a
They-
legislation?
they say that at a minimum, BZAs must do this under state law, and they encourage further steps, including signage, and then BZAs have the authority to do that. Really exceptional.
I just wondered, that's a rule that comes down through the board and then the board has to.
Maybe I misread it, but
Yeah,
I guess if the board wants to do it, they could, but
We definitely. have to do
I mean, I'm not a lawyer.
We
so
have
I'm taking,
appellate jurisdiction. We have appellate jurisdiction, but we can't legislate.
So it's on page 3, there's discussion of 500-foot manning notification about that up to 1,500. Next response was the 500-foot requirement only applies to notices under GML 239, which is the county review. Any other notice requirements based on the distance or posting on the site are town board decisions, not for the BZA to decide. So we would have to make a suggestion to make a code amendment to the town board and have that codified under.
So that goes for all three of those things we suggested, 500-foot signage and change 500 to 15. All that.
So that's 2 weeks and 1,500
2
feet.
weeks and 15. All right.
The first talk said we wanted to start with just 1 and 2 stars. Not
Meetings.
I just wanted to have some progress, so we don't.
But I think
That's the real issue here.
I'd like to see all three, while
I'll agree.
revisiting this.
For $5 more, whatever, to send out.
Okay, I'm fine with
And I think if we're going to amend the code, we should do it all.
Michael, did you have something to do anything?
Interested what document Mr. Howard was referring to.
Yeah, well, it's the actual state one, but it's
It's a summary of it from Syracuse University.
did you have that? Here, you can- your extra copy.
You want me to send you the state one? It's awesome. It's really well written and surprising. Surprising.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's written specifically because, every town that has zoning has a BZA.
Sure.
They're required by law to give guidance as to what our procedure.
And then they all put the different flavors on it. So that's why I pick and choose, like, oh yeah, they did this and Echelon did this and so and so. But they can change the basic underpinnings of the laws. But that state one is awesome, and that one is even more compressed and easy to read.
Although they confusingly call us zoning appeals board. So it's a
ZBA. Zoning appeals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always a ZAD.
ZBA. And then they do ZBA. Well, we're the ones. I think everybody else is ZBA. Okay, good. So that's
I guess I would. If the town attorney thinks that we don't have the power, I'm not aware. I suggest we pass a resolution asking the town board to undertake this on consideration.
you want to go ahead and make the resolution?
Yeah, I move that we take what I've written here and ask the town board to consider the code.
The whole thing, or do you want to make a statement that compresses that into 3 things?
I'm suggesting the whole thing, but I'm open to the.
Yeah, but I have my notes on this.
Actually, I would do the 1 side, not the other side. So I'm only suggesting.
Yeah, this side here.
That's all I'm suggesting, yeah.
I
had a
suggest that we
two-sided
take it, we compress it down instead of having all the role of the board and zoning appeals and all that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, we already know the role is coming.
Well, I might,
from higher
I might suggest then that the first paragraph be placed on the town website. I don't think that
Oh,
requires.
I like that. I like that idea.
Because what's on there now really doesn't describe what we do anymore, so it's puzzling.
Can I borrow just a copy? Since we're talking.
Sure, I mean, it's the first paragraph
Yeah,
on the short page.
And I mean, it's mandated by law, so we're just stating what we do, really.
No, I like it. It's just- Your appeals decisions rendered by the staff.
And it, you know, it's,
They're not our decisions. They don't come to us until the staff review, renders a decision on them.
if someone from the general public comes and says, I'm thinking of doing this, what do you think? We actually are discouraged by law.
Unless, and then it gets complicated. Unless. There are some things in which we can hear directly.
So the first paragraph.
I'm suggesting we just put that on the website.
Sure, just so, what is the piece?
Because what's there now is not very descriptive. And then I'm fine with, you know,
I don't think the second paragraph should, it doesn't go anywhere other than, you know, the news, right?
well, it suggests 2 weeks notice.
Okay, so that's a good one. 2 weeks notice, and I really like it, you to compress it down to 2 weeks notice, 1,500 feet and signage. And you want to say minimum one sign? I don't know. Which one.
I'm fine with one sign.
Or just signage.
I think your idea of it's a really big property kind of makes sense, but let's do it.
I wouldn't use the word water because that's gonna codify, so I would just say sign.
Signage, I'm with you. In signage, right? Yeah. Thank you.
And 1,500 feet.
Yep. Mhm. And then the board thinks that, well, that's crazy, you know, make it.
Well, it's your decision apparently, but that's, we will be recommending to you to use. Well,
All right, I vote for
I know
that.
if we do that.
I vote for that. I second that. Are you with that? Hey, aye. Okay, good. So really, the board present today. All agrees to that. That's good. I don't know if we want to go that part of the fast, but it kind of segues into how do we deliver information to the board? And I want the 2 board members to listen to this here. I want to talk about how we present information to the board. We're down at the, I don't want to be dramatic, but the rubber meets the road with our appeals board. And we run into little details that come up in the wording because people look very carefully at what they're trying to appeal and they say, well, yeah, the zoning wording. And there's sometimes where there are competing legislation or code or words that compete with each other or restrictions that, so one's more restrictive than another, but they both hold sway. And
You come across them.
we do, we have those, we have a few.
Deals, because we're gonna eventually
Okay,
get incorporated in the zoning code after the comprehensive plan.
is that what we're gonna wait for though, or can we have it switched now?
Well, I mean, every time you do a code change, it costs a bunch of money.
Oh,
I'm not sure how much it costs, but I can find out.
but it does make it hard. We go like, what do we have? 50-75 feet, meaning if you look somewhere it's 50 and you look somewhere else it's 75. That's really hard for us to deal with.
Can I interject?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I think we should keep track of those and let the town board know so that you can decide what you want to do with it, but clarify it for the next time around. But again, under the state law, we have the power in the meanwhile to interpret. that.
Oh, we
So-
interpret, we do, and we do.
And it's fine, and we do. So if it says 50 or 75, we can say the board met 50 feet and then that's it. And that's actually precedent.
Well, and there's a great example of the dotted line on the USGS topo quad. It was last photo inspected in 1971 and it should have no bearing on, in our code, should not be in our zoning code. It's just not a representation of reality then or today.
You know what you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's just something, it's, the appellants know because they looked at it and went, oh, okay, there's no dotted line on this USGS map. When in fact, there's a few things if you look elsewhere, and Neil's looked into a really nice one, that say, or this, or that, or that, very confusing, that one should just be removed, that statement should be removed. So that's one that we hit like now, today, right? You know, that's very fun.
Public owners
I know.
deal with that if you don't
You
have
don't.
something in code that you can actually address.
So that's why we're
Thank you.
suggesting the town.
Good
needs to
point.
address
Thank
it.
you very much for that
That's fine.
statement.
Well, because an example, my lot runs from 87 to 100 feet wide. If you take a 75-foot setback on that, you have now made a lakefront property non-functional.
Well, that's assuming that it doesn't, that it comes to this board and the board says, no, we strictly adhere to the rules, which that's not our job. But we don't, if we strictly adhere to every single zoning ordinance, we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't need us. If we let everything pass because you wanted it, we wouldn't need us. So we're in between. We deliberate, we think about it, we
You're
understand.
doing your job, I understand.
Well, I'm not saying that. That seems like
But what you're talking about here, removing the USGS as the source.
No,
base,
no.
That's what you're talking
No,
about.
no, those words do not come out of my mouth.
Well,
I'm
you're
saying-
talking about a dash line on a
I'm
USGS.
saying,
survey.
take that thing out of our coding, because elsewhere, it's very clear what we can go by elsewhere. So these things are just competing because they're different places. That's all. I'm not saying what you just said, so strike that from the record.
Okay.
No.
That's not what came across to me.
No, you found a point. It was a good point. You found a statement in there that said, oh, or the dotted line and the thing, but it's more complex than that if you read all the code everywhere and it's or this or that or authority and all. So Niels actually did some great compilation, pulled that all together. How would you know? I don't know. You'd have to read all the code and you'd have to interpret it all. Right? You know, it's just not, that's what we're trying to get at.
And in the end, you'd have to read our interpretation. You'd have to find something.
We want to be as clear as possible, so whenever there's a conflict,
Good.
we can take care of it.
Yep. So we should report it to you, like have Molly write it down or how? Yes.
I have my own list, but I'd like to hear what the BZA's found over theirs.
Those are good. I think there's another one that's been plaguing me is, I think lot coverage for the impermeable surfaces.
Yeah,
and all that.
Yeah, I was just writing down.
You were thinking that too? Huh?
Flat top driveway,
Oh,
you know, impervious driveways and
Swimming pools. I knew you were
Are
saying that.
they impervious surfaces?
Are they?
I think they are.
I
but
know
that-
it's all the time. I don't think it's.
Funny. Oh, no.
Functionally, it is. The fact is, you guys on the board have written stuff that has some ambiguity in it, and legally, we are the interpreters of that ambiguity.
Some of it's carried over from the past. And it's not.
Yeah, I'm not,
It's not rich.
I'm clearly not.
Like,
It's gonna prove it each time, but it's.
yeah. So, but we find it, and because it's pointed out to us by
I
a
think it's
student.
critical that we know and we'll do an update. as soon as we get it back. But no, if you think we do it, you know, should back to time.
That's cool. And then here's another one that plagues me, and it's already, it's also current right now in almost every setback we do. That 20%
Yeah.
leeway.
Why?
Does that bother anybody?
Why?
It's a 50-foot setback. What, you too? It's a 50-foot setback, but you get 20% leeway on it. What does that even mean? What does that mean?
That's trying to figure out what that meant. I was reading that.
It means 40, it means it's 40, not 50, right?
So why not
It's
just
not,
say 40?
it's not both of those things. It's only
It
one.
confuses the applicants. We try to be consistent, but it's not. And therefore, we have to, rediscuss it each time and explain it to a confused public each time.
And us, and to us. We were confused why that's the case.
Then our membership changes.
And I think that's a carryover, because I remember that from days past, don't you, or is it new? I don't know. So, is it?
I honestly don't know.
No,
I would have said new, but I don't know.
so we're not blaming the current board, we're saying,
No.
it's just, these things get carried over. That's a lot, I mean, there's a lot of code in this. Obviously, some contradictions there. Those are just examples that we come across, and those are frequent ones too. What do we decide about, what did we ask about wetlands? What did we say would be a good question for Rebecca?
That would be a good one to bring in for considerations of, how the town classifies wetlands.
Oh, how
What's
is
the
classified?
classification is the big thing.
Like the good thing is, the lake is not classified as wet. Really? Okay, but then now,
Well, actually, it is, depends on who's coding it and when, and so right now, our code kind of depends on something else. Some, what, like, the authorities as opposed to
Bases it on
scheme?
agency, so
Agency.
whether it's a federal, state, or local. And my professional practice and what the state does is based on the category of
Right, so we
wetland.
should base it on category too.
I would suggest, and I think I'd be surprised if Rebecca wouldn't suggest the same, is that
Right.
wetlands should be based on the category of wetland, which requires a professional to go out there and assess it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some things like, oh, Cayuga Lake is not classified as a wetland by some agency. Does anything make any sense to anything? Anyway, for instance, so we just named what, 4 or 5 swimming pools should just be taken out of the town. Nobody should have those.
Impervious parking areas.
Yeah. Impervious. What else? Did we talk about some things today? Did we cover all of them?
I think so.
Other aspects?
Yeah.
Tom, would you like to bring anything up? No, all set. Maybe what do you got?
Well, I don't know if it's how critical or anything this is, but we often do site visits.
Yeah.
And back in, I think you asked even in January, does the board do site visits? And we often do, almost, I don't know, I can't speak for all board members, but I think most of us try to get to the site if there's a question that needs to be answered. And usually for me, like, well, let's take one of the most recent ones, Reynolds Road, I could do all that from the right of way. I could just do a drive-by, basically park in the road and look it all over carefully. And some though, along the way, we can't do a site visit without permission or coming by in a boat. And so is there any, do we have anything to concern about that? You know, do we have any procedure we need to, like, shall we notify the appellate that we might come look at their place?
I think we have to, don't we? Don't we have to?
Do they, when they apply, do they give us permission? We could ask for that.
It'd be best, yeah, if we include that as part of the application, a statement, whether or not they approve.
I mean, when I go to ones which are not obvious, I go to the door and say who I am and ask if it's okay if I look around. Sometimes people are there, they like feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a little different with building permits. For a submitted building permit, the CEO has the authority under state law to do a site visit.
You can enter on private property.
Yeah.
At your convenience.
Yeah, it's not quite the same with it.
Well, I mean, this is just unique because Mr. Hankowski gave us permission and I'll meet you anytime. But normally we wouldn't have you here unless we were making a decision.
We were already there.
Yeah. So it makes it a little tough now. I know you do site visits a lot.
I try.
I do a lot of drive-bys and I tend not to go down there. But I do a ton of GIS and remote sensing and all that stuff. I feel very comfortable interpreting from those. They're not great. I do like the photos that are sent. I like them around the ground, pictures. So you put those together, I feel pretty good.
Seasonally for the lakefront one, kayak.
And that's been helpful for sales. Yeah. I don't know. What's the solution? I like that idea of putting
Have
out
a
a
BZA kayak.
Yeah.
I wasn't
thinking of that as a solution.
Okay. I don't know that we need to have a resolution. We need one for this. I think it's good to discuss it because I think it's part of the whole thing of improving public discourse and awareness of what's going on and our awareness and everything.
Well, I think in the application process, if you put in a waiver or agreement that that the BZA can go visit the property within certain parameters, and not blanket, right?
Maybe notify by calling. What do you think?
A call or between this hour and this hour within 2 weeks of something. In other words, there are limits on when they can go, so the applicant isn't always waiting for you to come. Right? Something like that.
Just show up.
I can draft something up and distribute it to the board for review.
Take a look at that. That's a good idea. Put some something in there and then
Keep in mind that usually you guys have individuals, right?
Yep.
And we have done, what's my experience, group ones.
I know we do the shoots, right?
Well, it's a formal
Sure, that's right. Once you get together, it's
Requires
requires.
someone taking minutes and everything else, and when we've done that, we've had legal counsel there too, so it's a
Right,
great
the
deal.
better you go,
Otherwise, yeah, we're two is two. But just in terms of keeping applicants happy, they need to realize, you know, get 5 or 6 of us coming at various times.
you can even put
You
your
can't
name, you can even put your names on it. Well, they don't think of it. Any of these 6 people, 5 people. can vote on this project. Because I've been trying to call and make an appointment. That becomes conversation.
I'll draft a waiver for review.
Yeah, let's continue talking about it. I like it. That's a good point, very good point. I don't feel comfortable just walking on like, Mr. Klankowski's property, going down the hill. Unannounced. I think we need badges, I'll say.
Uniforms.
Uniform. Oh, yeah. I'll have that on. Good point, Andy, thank you. I want to bring up a bigger thing. That, I don't know if we can answer that now, right? But we are empowered, I think obligated to come up with solutions that are reasonable solutions if we can. And so that entails lots of times coming up with alternatives that may not be directly related to the proposed, usually it's a structure or a change of it's always a change of some sort. I don't want to call it infraction, but encroachment on something, some code. So sometimes it'll be like, well, that structure is there, but you're putting up a new structure on a steep slope. And by doing that, you're also increasing the runoff coming off that roof. And that's only going to create problems, and it's only going to get worse because things are red. So steep slopes are a good example. And so then we'll say, I'm not really for it, but the thing we're not for is the structure being where it is. That's within our direct purview, right? 10 feet from the property line, something like that. And so often we'll say, yes, we'll consider that if you alleviate it in some other dimension. So runoff on that roof would concern me, and that's not really the issue at hand. The issue at hand is, can you do this? Like infraction on a buffer zone or something like that. And so we will often offer more consideration if you do other things. So swales or gardens, or how you're going to divert that water because water's coming off that roof, all these things. And so there's a point at which you can march pretty far away from what the original application was all about. But we feel very comfortable doing that, and it's been supported in all sorts of ways. And it's definitely coming from law that we can do that. Sometimes, however, we get to the point where it's like, that's not really relevant, right? Remember a couple of times that's not really relevant to this case at hand. And so I feel comfortable doing that, and I feel comfortable making those decisions here, and we make them with the knowledge. And in the case of environmental, we're pretty steeped in that knowledge. A lot of us on this board.
And doesn't the planning board have to give input on issues like that?
We sometimes get it, but not always. Sometimes we make the decisions right here.
I thought we had a process where on these kind of things, the planning board would weigh in, like, doing unlike the site plan or even do recommendation.
Sometimes,
And then it would go to the.
sometimes, but often they put it to us first because
Yeah, the other.
they're shirking their duties.
And we make some decisions which don't require
Right, a secret or a site plan or anything. There's plenty of those.
So we do. I mean, I think, I'm proud of it.
Oh, me too, me too.
When we've done it, they tend to be creative ideas, and the applicants aren't, they're not screaming at us, why are you making us do that? They generally go, sure.
No, it's always a mutual agreement.
They're happy that we're giving them
Oh,
a
okay.
decision.
And we can't guarantee it, like if you say, yes, I will put in, something to deal with the runoff and do this and put in, foot and a half of rock gravel coming out the roof, something like that, not diverting right to the streams, going right down to your lake or going right down to your house, which is down there. So usually we're thoughtful and we try and make it so it's a win-win situation for also the appellant. So we feel great about this. We felt great about the cars decision, right?
Yeah.
Am I speaking for this meeting?
No.
Yeah, and that was clearly they wanted to encroach on a lot on our space in our county, and we had them promise not to develop in the next county.
Right.
That was
Which
great.
they agreed to.
And they agreed to it.
It's all
Okay,
good.
good. I mean, so
Do we really have the authority to say what the public we do with their one design?
that's right. And then, anyway, so we have the power to do that here. We don't abuse it for sure. We like the solutions that have come out of it. I want to make sure that everybody knows that we do that and we're okay with it. And it's definitely within our power and our purview. And I checked on it a bunch of times and we are in the right to do that. We like what we're doing. Everybody okay with that?
You're your own judicial authority, as long as it's in the purview of the BZA.
Yeah, but it gets,
We can always be
sometimes you can
challenged.
get out
before,
there. Sometimes you can get out there and say, well, yeah, sure. If you-
But that's why, if you're out there, there's a question, get the planning board's input on it. And then you have cover, you also have some cover.
Well, I mean, we could have on the car thing, we could have, that we didn't. It's a legal issue, but you know, we discussed it basically.
But the cars issue came to the planning board many times,
Right.
so they were already right.
And back, by the way, right?
I think that's the solution that the
There.
proposal came to, that it did not come from the planning board. That we,
Right, no,
that was promised not to develop.
It's, you know, when we get down to this stage, then it's like, well, we're not really feeling it right here. With it, you know, if you did this and you did that, I would consider that. And then that was kind of where it came. No. Oh, good. Oh, Linda, join us, please.
Yeah.
You're muted right now.
Since we're talking about the planning board.
Yeah, good.
Hi, sorry. I just wanted, this might be helpful to your discussion. Prior to this year, or my rejoining the planning board, we had never reviewed, the planning board had never reviewed projects before they went to the BZA. So this year, we've started looking at them prior to them going to the BZA and making recommendations to send to you. So you know what the planning board thinking is from from a plat review perspective. Okay, so that's different. I mean, that might make it easy, you know, be helpful to you as well. But we think a lot about the kinds of things, Steve, that you were talking about. I mean, obviously, Rebecca gets really involved with, you know, how the site should be built to deal with. Even though we can't dictate it, a lot of times we can often make recommendations that people seem pretty amenable to. Yeah.
So we have the additional advantage, we can require.
Right,
Yeah,
but they don't have
Well,
to-
they don't
They don't
have
have
to
to
do
accept
it,
it, right.
but if they want.
They have to, if they want to do what they want to do.
Right. Yeah, no, we appreciate that, Linda. In fact, I wasn't bashing you guys, but sometimes.
No, I know.
It's tough to us because they're like, well, if they don't approve it, then what's the point of us doing, even looking at it?
Oh, no, we always read your recommendations.
So I'm just joking about that more than anything, but we do appreciate, because you got some pretty good and thoughtful people on there and good expertise on that. So every eye that looks at this and comments is great. We like that. We like that a lot. And it makes us feel more comfortable when we're coming up with maybe alternative solutions or suggestions, because we can require, I guess require is the word, right? Can we?
In the condition of approval.
We can, yeah, condition on approval, right? We can put conditions on it, but we usually don't guarantee. I mean, when we sit here and say, well, would you consider doing this? Or how about this? And how about something? And would you write that down? And then that goes as part of the appeal. Right? And then it gets,
restrict, it gets, becomes a deed restriction, really. So it carries with it forever. Is that true?
Runs with the land. Yeah.
What?
It variances decisions by the BZA run with the land.
Run with the land, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, but in case of the cars, again, we require them to put a deed restriction on the land they own. It's kind of-
right, so the restrictive covenants that go with
In order to
forever,
get
the land forever, right? Okay, good.
That would be a condition, yeah.
Yeah, those good.
That isn't considered a overstepping the bounds ruling or something in another county.
Well, that's what we really looked at that a lot, very carefully, and we got legal. And then we also were talking with lawyers here. They had lawyers representing, and they agreed. They got their heads together and said, "Okay, we'll sign off." And I mean, they argued for a long time. We don't agree with your interpretation, all that kind of stuff. We actually have many more acres than you're saying we do, and we were like, it's not our interpretation. You only have a certain number of acres in our jurisdiction. So, yeah, they agreed, and they put it in. They wrote it down. Okay, I just wanted to get that out there because I don't want people to be thinking that we're overstepping by suggesting alternative solutions. We're always doing it with keeping in mind that what something is, if you're here in front of us, you're already, I don't want to say, you're already proposing to go against our town rules. So we respect those greatly, a lot. We have a lot to do with them, all of us, and they're really thoughtful. So we don't take them lightly. Anyway, so, I don't want to get off in a big speech here, but we respect that and we take it very seriously. So then when we're saying, well, how about an alternative? And I don't mean an alternative being you move your thing elsewhere and don't, comply with the rules, but an alternative that provides that would outweigh the potential detriment. Right? So we feel very good about that, and I vote that we continue to do that. Anybody else second that? Okay, so where are we? We
10
okay?
minutes before.
Are we good? And any input, Michael? Anything you want to? This is our good chance to I'll talk together and with the new person.
Yeah, I like the idea of, reviewing what, your rules are and how you work. And we have a new team here, and it's always good for me to hear it as a town board member when things come to us, like, Rich and I are both here, so as we get a signage request. Signage request.
You got to. I think that's the result of turning that thing.
It is.
So anyway, when it comes to us, then I have a better understanding of what we're talking about. So Rich and I can back each other up at the town board meeting.
Yeah, and I really wanted to, sorry that we can move on with the appeals tonight, but we really need to just sit and do this. And we haven't done it with you at all yet, right? On the phone and things like that. Okay, good. I feel real good about this. I think we're going to pick up the appeal next month. Any questions while we have the appellants here? Any questions regarding this stuff? And I don't mean to get down to nitty gritty, but anything, materials,
One thing,
alternatives?
so one thing we've asked Niels to do, because once we went to the USGS survey,
Yep.
that eliminated the intermittent stream.
I saw that. Yep.
That should simplify what you have to consider and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Setbacks.
Yeah, I saw that. And actually, that is not going to be eliminated, I think is the ruling on that. Just because the USGS doesn't have a dotted line there, there are other authorities that do call that an intermittent stream, that specific stream. So that's in our code too.
I would like to know those parts of the code, because that's how I got figured the first part
Sure.
out, was reading the.
I know, that was good. I'm glad you brought that up too, by the way. Thank you. Can we,
I'll forward your.
Niels came up with a good one and show exactly where it was and all that stuff.
Because, if the town puts out a code, and then the citizens should be able to sort of take that as
what we're working
Yeah,
on.
no question.
But then if you come in with a different set of rules that we have no way to access, that gets pretty tough to deal with.
That's why we brought this up to the board. Yeah, we need to change some of the wording in some places that are making it confusing.
Because I went through that GS survey. Currently, there are only 13 intermittent streams showing in
Not currently,
Ulysses
that was
Township.
1971, by the way.
Well, whatever, but your town regulations right now say to go by the USGS survey.
In one spot, in one place.
Right, and there's 5 streams and 13 intermittents, and there's like 50 valleys like mine at least or more in this township.
At least. Yep. Okay, yeah, so we have other authorities, and I'm just giving you a heads up, that's not gonna carry. That won't be dropped from the appeal. And then we'll send you some stuff, just because you're here, and thanks for coming tonight. I'm sorry we had to put you through listening to all this
No,
stuff.
it's been good, the chance to learn this and get in and read it. You know, I'm a mechanical engineer by training, so I don't
Yeah.
mind reading 200 pages of a document if
Yeah.
need be.
You engineers, you're killing me all the time. You did say, I think you wrote somewhere Seneca Lake, I think you're talking about Cayuga.
Yeah, it's Hughley.
I saw that.
I just had a comment on, this is just kind of a little bit from left field, but in the code, you know, there'll be a statement like, there's a 50-foot buffer from Cuba Lake. Right? And that's fine. There's exceptions written in there though, in the code, which says, you know, it's looking for reasonable things that would be allowed, that are useful to the homeowners, that kind of thing. Docks, boat hoists, storage structures. So it clearly gives guidance to the homeowners that even though there's reason to have a 50-foot buffer, guidance there are good reasons to have things in that zone and they allow it. Right. So things like our tram business, the stairs that, you know, to get to that dock, you know, we would hope the town would consider some of those items, even though they're not spelled out specifically like that. They would also be kind of in that category. They could potentially be in that category if the case was done correctly. So it's like, you know, yes, you have your setbacks, but you have realized, or someone has, maybe not this board, the importance of having accessibility to the lake. And so, you know, docks are clearly, are seemingly clearly, at least for now, I think you would allow them based on your code, as you say that.
It's my understanding that the town under state law can't actually regulate docks.
This is a major discussion, I think, for what we actually deal with the case.
Yeah, let's take this up.
Yeah.
When you get to the case.
It wasn't intended to, you know, for this particular one, but it's just kind of giving us guidance so that you know, we understand how we can help support Kowski, you know, going forward or not. I mean, if it's going to be, you know, done with development, that's your prerogative to do that. But it would save us all a lot of time.
I think we're on the same page. That's why those suggestions are basically what we consider all the time. Yeah, there's things down there. We know there's docks down there, there's boat houses and all. And so that's what we do. We spend a lot of time dealing with structures down by the water. Also with the overriding kind of consideration that the lake is a treasure, that we are not going to despoil it or allow it to be despoiled by certain activities.
Sure.
So, okay, so yes, good. Thank you, Mr. Ritchie.
Yeah, appreciate that.
To be continued next month. Sorry about that, but next month. Nice talking to you all this time. And then we'll send you that documentation on the other wording in there that kind of obviates the dotted line, that USGS dotted line. Yes. Thank you. Anything else? Thanks.
So to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Second, buddy. You sure? Second. Discussion on that? Take a vote. Aye. Tom said yes. Aye. Okay. Thank you, Tom, board members, for coming. Andy, take over. Yes. This is what's pretty good.
sure why this computer does that, but
Did we cover everything? Ruth?
it doesn't seem to register.
Yeah. Thank you.
Doesn't want
That's the
to.
one that- Good luck with our minutes.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Rich.
Judges back.
So not responding to anything.
Yeah, me
Doesn't want to end.
What is going on? Are you like
Let's try again.
crazy?
It's just like, it's tired. It's like this-
It's not just the students.
the first one. Okay, there we go.